All right, here we go. What up, brawlers? Welcome back to Throwin Hands. It's Jacob, and there's Daniel. Daniel, how you doing?
Doing great, man. Ready for this fight card Saturday. I'm ready to talk about it. I'm fired up for this. This is about as excited as I've been all year for this.
Yeah, same. But we're gonna hop right into the first fight of the main card: Hakeem Dawodu versus Tukhov. What are your thoughts on Tukhov?
Tukhov is really mostly known for being part of Khabib Nurmagomedov's crew that was part of that scrap after his fight with Conor McGregor at UFC 229. He got a 1-year suspension from the NSAC for that, as well as a $25,000 fine. It ended up being reduced to 35 days. So he's been able to fight for a little while. He fought back in February, knocked out Kevin Aguilar. He's the Russian, the Chechen guys that really come with that crew with Khabib Nurmagomedov. He's really more of a striker than a lot of those guys. He's got 7 knockouts, 11 wins by decision, just 1 submission. His background is in hand-to-hand combat and combat sambo. He trains with American Kickboxing Academy, so he's a very talented striker. I'm not going to say he's a particularly crisp fighter, but he's got outstanding strikes. He's got, like I said, he's got knockout power. 7 of his 19 wins have come by KO. But he's a guy that probably, in most cases, is going to be looking to take the fight to the full 3 rounds, as that's where 11 of his wins have come.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with you there. And he does like to use his wrestling and sambo just to put you on the ground and grind you out like that. So we could very well see that against a guy in Hakeem Dawodu, who's a Muay Thai guy. He's on a 4-fight win streak. He's gone on a tear ever since he lost his UFC debut. He likes his Thai clinch, creative, powerful, and unpredictable. I think that's the best way to describe Hakeem Dawodu. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree. This is kind of the fight for Hakeem Dawodu, where we're going to see if he can really take that next step. He's 29, so he's just hitting his prime. Like you said, 4 straight, relatively impressive wins, a couple split decisions in there, but a performance of the night with a knockout against Yoshinori Horii at one point. So, like you said, Muay Thai does well in the Thai clinch, really likes to kind of dirty things up in that kind of situation. So, I think Dawodu is a really interesting striker, and I think this is going to be a really interesting matchup because these are 2 guys that are very strong strikers, but they set it up in very different ways.
Yeah, very true. All right, so on to the keys for Dawodu. I think he has to maintain center control because I think Tukhugov would just take him to the ground if he gets put up along the fence. And he's got to stay unpredictable and use his 5.5-inch reach advantage just to keep Tukhugov at bay. What are your thoughts?
I would agree. I think the more of a kickboxing fight that this can be turned into, the more of an advantage Dawodu is going to have. Like you said, keep him at bay. Don't let him use that sambo background to set up what he's going to try to do with his strikes. So I would agree with that. Dawodu needs to let Chuganov come to him instead of really flying out and trying to end this early, I think.
Yeah, and what are your keys for Tukhugov?
I think he's going to want to close the distance on this. I think he's going to want to keep it in close, maybe back this up against the fence, kind of grind it out that way, and try to just, take control of the fight and slow things down. And he's not going to want to, get out over his skis because, like I said, one of the keys for Dawodu is going to be letting Tuganov make the mistakes. But I think for Tuganov to win this fight, he's going to have to grind it out, slow it down, probably make this a little bit more of a boring fight than people would hope for out of a main card opener. But I think that's probably the best way for him to try to get a win.
Yeah, I can't add anything more to that. So predictions, give me Dawodu by decision. I think his reach will just carry him in this one. What do you have to say?
I'll go the same.
Alrighty, so to the next matchup of the night, Caitlyn Vieira, versus Sajara Eubanks. We talked about Sarge a little bit. Very strong woman. She likes to wrestle a lot. What are your thoughts on Sarge?
Yeah, like you said, very strong wrestler, very just strong person in general. Outstanding Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, multi-time medalist at the World Jiu-Jitsu Championships. And that's really where she's made her money in the past. She's got 2 wins by knockout, 4 by decision in just 10 pro fights. But it's been her ability to get people to the ground and just grind them out, use her superior strength to just, like I said, put people out of commission and just destroy their conditioning as the fight goes on. So that's really what she brings to the table. She's a phenomenal athlete. She's 35 years old and fights like she's in her 20s. And she brings a level of experience, not necessarily a level of experience, but a level of cerebral fighting you don't typically see out of someone with just 10 pro fights.
Yeah, I'm not even going to add anything to that, but I'm going to talk about Caitlyn Vieira. She's good. 10-1. She's young. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Judo black belts. Very refined grappling background, and she's a Brazilian national wrestling champion. So I think they're very similar fighters, but I just think Vieira's better. What do you think?
I would agree. Caitlyn Vieira is an outstanding ground fighter. She's one of the most well-rounded ground fighters, I think, in the UFC overall. This was originally supposed to be a fight against Marion Renault, so it was going to be a little bit more of a closer fight in the rankings. But still, Eubanks cracked that top 15 after her last win against Julia Avila. So I think Caitlyn Vieira is going to be in a good place in this fight because it is two ground-based fighters, and she's going to have the clear advantage on that in terms of her background.
Definitely. So, to Keys, let's start with Eubanks. I think for Eubanks is that if it goes to the ground, it's pivotal for her to get top control. I think if Vieira gets any sort of top control, I think she'll end this one quickly. What are your keys for Eubanks?
You took the words right out of my mouth.
And for Vieira, just work well on the back and try to get top control. I don't think there's much more to it. What do you have?
I think it's going to be all about work rate for Vieira in this fight. Keep the pace higher. Don't let Eubanks just turn this into a slog for 3 rounds. Keep the fight going. Keep transitioning when it does go to the ground because this fight is going to go to the ground. But I think the key for Vieira is going to be to keep the fight moving, make Eubanks roll with her. Don't necessarily just settle on one thing and try to grind this fight out. I think she needs to stay active, whether she's on the bottom or top.
Yeah. So predictions. Give me a Vieira by submission.
I'm going the same. We're 2 for 2.
Ooh, I like this. All right, to a flyweight matchup. Kai Kara France versus Brandon Royval. Two very talented young guys coming into this matchup. What are your thoughts on Royval?
Brandon Royval, a very spectacular start to his UFC career. An LFA stalwart, fought there for several years, and then makes his UFC debut back in May and has a second-round arm triangle win against Tim Elliott. So that's a huge debut for him. He's a guy that people have a lot of interest in. He's 28 years old making his UFC debut, and he's actually older than Kai Kara France, who's fought 29 times as a pro already. But Royval, 11 wins, 7 submissions, 3 knockouts, and then just 1 decision. This is a guy that likes to finish fights. This is a guy that knows how to finish fights. And this is a guy that is really exciting to watch. He's coming off 3 straight submission wins, 2 arm bars, and then that arm triangle choke, like I said, against Tim Elliott. So Royval is a guy who finishes people on the ground and is able to set it up with some pretty decent striking as well.
I think you just put it perfectly. And he's just a very active grappler. He doesn't really stop. If he's on his back, he's going to try and grapple you with him. Very, very talented jiu-jitsu player. But when we talk about Kai Kara France, this guy's boxing might be the most refined in this division. And he has very quick hands. He does have a Brazilian jiu-jitsu blue belt, so he can get it down on the ground a little bit. He does have 3 subs to his name. He's very patient and powerful. And his gas tank is unlimited, it seems like. He just keeps going. What are your thoughts on Kai Kara France?
That's the thing that impresses me most about him is this guy just doesn't stop. Like you said, outstanding boxing, very refined, and he combines that with a motor that just keeps going and going and going. He's got one of the best gas tanks in the entire UFC, and that's what I feel like has won him fights is just the fact that he's able to outlast his opponents and still just keep landing those shots. And it's a really impressive way that we've seen him kind of rise up. He's 27 years old, and like I said, he's fought 29 times as a pro already. So this is a guy with a ton of experience at a young age who's not quite to his prime necessarily, that is really impressive when it comes to his striking.
Definitely. All right, on keys for the match. I think for ooh, shoot, I forgot to put keys for this one. Dang. But I think for Royval, I think his best chance would be to get Kai Kara France on the ground, set up some takedowns with some striking. I think it's pretty simple for Royval. What do you have to say?
I would agree. This is an interesting matchup because you look at the measurables on these guys. Kai Kara France is 5'4". Brandon Royval is 5'9", but Kara France actually has a 1-inch reach advantage and only a 1.5 disadvantage on the legs. So you would think that Brandon Royval would be able to much easier get in and shoot in for takedowns and have those opportunities, but maybe not necessarily. I think the more of a fight in a phone booth that this turns into, the better a chance Kai Kara France is going to have if they can just stay in tight and really turn this into a boxing match. He's going to need to use his takedown defense. He's not really been tried a ton on takedowns. He's got 90% takedown defense, whereas Brandon Royval landed every takedown he attempted against Tim Elliott in his debut. So I am really excited for that clash of styles because, like I said, Kara France hasn't been tested a ton when it comes to takedowns, but his record in that realm is elite. I think whoever makes this fight into what they're better at, whether it be Brandon Royval landing a takedown and trying to finish Kai Kara France there, or Kai Kara France keeping it on the feet and turning this into a boxing match, that's going to be where this fight is decided. It's pretty cut and dry there for me.
Yeah, I'm not going to add anything. All right, predictions. I think Kai Kara France is going to get this one by knockout. I think he does have solid takedown defense enough, but don't count Royval out. So give me Kai Kara France with a knockout. What do you have to say?
I'm going with a Royval sub. I think this is a guy that we're going to see through the end of 2020 and beginning of 2021 really rise up in this division.
For sure. For sure. All right, to the first championship bout of the night, Dominick Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz. These two guys, they possess some power, but I think Jan Blachowicz Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background is pretty notable in this one. What do you have to say about Jan Blachowicz?
Yeah, Blachowicz is one of my favorite guys to watch, honestly, in this division. He's very well-rounded, as you said, 7 KOs, 9 submissions, and then he tacks on 10 decision wins to that. Coming off a win against Corey Anderson, early knockout in that one, performance of the night bonus. This is a guy that is very exciting to watch. He's a 4-time performance of the night winner, 1-time fight of the night winner. So this is a guy that knows how to win and knows how to do it spectacularly. And other than a loss to Thiago Santos early in 2019, this guy, since he's come to the UFC, has fought successfully and he's fought often. He had a little bit of trouble early in his career. He ended up losing 4 of 5 at one point from 2015 to 2017, early in his time in the UFC. But since then, since 2017, he is 7-1, and that includes wins over Jared Cannonier, Jimmy Manua, Luke Rockhold, Ronaldo Souza, and Corey Anderson. So Jan Blachowicz is a guy that hasn't gotten that title opportunity yet, but he was next on the block. Even if this title wasn't vacated, he is a dominant performer who can get it done in pretty much any way you want to name.
I think you summed it up perfectly. And the thing about this guy, Blachowicz, is he's getting better with age. He just seems more refined as his career goes on. And he's just punching harder. It's crazy to see, especially at 37. But we're going to head over to Dominick Reyes. Lost to John Jones in the title fight back in February. But former football player, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt. But he can't get it done on the ground. He has 2 subs to his name. And if you get kicked, it's going to hurt. He knocks you out with those kicks. What are your thoughts on Dominick Reyes?
Yeah, you summed it up really well. Just a very powerful striker, able to do it on the ground to an extent. It's not going to be where he tries to take the fight. But as you said, a very consistent striker, a very powerful striker. He's going to be looking for knockouts. He's only had 3 fights go to decision in his 12 wins. So Dominick Reyes looking for the finish, looking for the knockout. That's where you're going to find him make his opportunities.
For sure. All right. So to keys, I think for Blachowicz, I think it would be in his best interest to get this fight on the ground. I think he has good kickboxing, but I think he does have he has slight advantages in both reach and leg reach, so it doesn't really matter there. But I think if Blachowicz gets this on the ground, I think that's where he'll take the fight. What do you have to say?
I agree. That's where he's going to have the best opportunity to finish this fight. I think if this goes a full 5, he's going to be able to stand with Reyes and strike. But if this fight gets finished and Jan Blachowicz is coming out with a win, it's going to be because he took it to the ground.
Definitely. And for Dominick Reyes, I think it's simple as keep it on the feet. Just keep him at bay with your kicks and just keep him watching. What do you have to say?
Yeah, that's what I would say. Dominick Reyes needs to just, control this fight when it's on the feet. He needs to keep Blachowicz backing up so he doesn't have the opportunity to shoot in for a takedown. I think if octagon control is going to be big for Dominick Reyes in this one. I think if he can maintain the center of the octagon, keep Blachowicz moving backwards towards the cage, keep driving towards him with his striking, that's going to be huge.
Definitely. All right, predictions. What do you got?
I'm going Jan Blachowicz. I think by decision. I think he's going to be able to handle Dominick Reyes. I think he's honestly, despite obviously Dominick Reyes fighting so well with John Jones, we're looking at Blachowicz. I think he's been tested more than Dominick Reyes has. Obviously, John Jones, that's a whole nother level. But when it comes to these guys' track records, I think Blachowicz has been challenged considerably more in his career than we've seen Dominick Reyes. So I think Blachowicz is able to take that experience, bring it into this title fight, and he walks away the light heavyweight champion.
Give me Jan Blachowicz by knockout. I think Dominick Reyes is just going to be too wary of takedowns, and Blachowicz is just going to catch him, and he'll just knock him out with one punch. That's why I'm feeling. All right, to the main event of the evening. You and I have been looking forward to this for quite a while. Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa. Two beasts here. What are your thoughts on Paulo Costa?
I mean, Paulo Costa he's an animal. He's like an undeniable force is the way I would describe this man. 13 professional fights, 13 wins, 11 knockouts, and he's only been in the UFC since 2017. He's only fought 5 times in the UFC, but I mean, he's so dominant. His last 2 wins have come against Yoel Romero and Uriah Hall. He's got 2 performance of the nights, a fight of the night, and just 5 fights in the UFC. He's one of the most powerful strikers, regardless of weight class, in the UFC, and I would say in the world. He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That's not where he's going to look to go, but he can handle himself there as well. Every win in the UFC except that fight against Yoel Romero has come by knockout. This is a guy that at 29 years old is entering his prime and is as dominant as any non-champion on the planet right now.
I'm not. There's not too much to add there, except he is a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He can get down on the ground a little bit, but like you said, he's a freak. I mean, that Yoel Romero Costa fight's the closest we'll ever get to like a real street fighter fight.
Yeah.
So these two guys, Paulo Costa's the man, I think. But let's talk about Israel Adesanya. He's the most refined and creative striker in the UFC right now, and I don't think that's even an opinion. That's a fact. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu blue belt, but he doesn't really use it too much. He's just he like he says, he aims and fires. He doesn't throw and hope, and I think that's the best way to describe Adesanya. What do you think?
Watching Israel Adesanya is like it's like watching like a military level sniper. It's like watching someone that is so refined and so skilled and so fine at what they do that it pays so much attention to the details. It's another level what this guy brings to the octagon. He's got power despite really a slight frame. He's got ridiculous reach. He's got an insane ability to just land strikes that look like they've come out of nowhere. I feel like I'm ranting and raving about both of these guys, but these are 2 of my favorite fighters in the world. And watching Adesanya, I talk about how beautiful it is to watch Kamaru Usman and the way that he wrestles and the way that he fights. Adesanya is the same way for me in his striking, where he's so creative and he does it in so many different ways that it's beautiful to watch. It's like watching – it's the closest thing to art that you're going to find in fighting.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And so for Paulo Costa, let's go to the keys. We're talking about keys now. Paulo Costa, I think it's pretty simple. Close the distance and just use constant pressure. I think that'll throw Israel Adesanya off a lot. I mean, Kevin Gastelum, whenever he brought the pressure in that fight, he had Israel Adesanya backing up. So I think if Paulo Costa keeps up the pressure a little bit and backs Adesanya up, he has a good chance of winning this fight. What do you have to say?
I think so as well. That's going to be the key. Don't allow Adesanya to move forward towards him because, yes, Adesanya has proven, despite guys coming at him with momentum, he can strike, but it's not going to give him the opportunity to probably knock Paulo Costa out. I think, like I said, Costa is so powerful and so athletic moving forward. If he can keep Adesanya moving back towards the cage, control the center of the octagon, he's going to have a really good chance to win this fight, and I think a really good chance to finish this fight.
Yeah, and I think another thing is, if Paulo Costa gets rocked, he does have a good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu background, so I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to take it to the ground a little bit here and there. But keys for Israel, use distance, use reach, aim and fire. I mean, That's slow the pace down, I think, too. I think it's really that simple for Israel Adesanya. What do you think?
I think Adesanya, it's obviously not a major key, but it's something to watch for. He needs to get out of the first 2 minutes of this fight without taking a huge blow. Because if Paulo Costa stings him early and injures him early, this is going to be a big problem for Adesanya. I think, like you said, he's going to need to keep Costa at bay. I think, honestly, if he can attack Costa's legs a good bit early on, that'll be huge for him because it'll take away that power that Paulo Costa is going to try to come at him with, and it'll take away some of his mobility as well. So I think Adesanya, like you said, slow this fight down, stretch it out over 5 rounds. We've seen Paulo Costa go 5 before, but I don't think he can keep up with Adesanya in terms of conditioning in that way. So the slower this fight goes, and really, I think this fight's going to be defined by the first 2 minutes. Because if Costa can charge in, and even if he doesn't knock out Adesanya early, if he can sting him a couple times and get him moving backwards, I think Costa dominates this fight. I think if Adesanya can set the pace early and make this, not necessarily a 5-round fight, but keep this going beyond, I would say, the 3rd round. I think if Adesanya can take this to the championship rounds, that's where this fight's going to be won.
I'm not going to add anything to that. I think you summed up perfectly. All right. Predictions. Who loses their 0?
It pains me to say this. It really does. But I said it earlier. Paulo Costa is undeniable. And I'm going to take – this is a takeoff of this man's nickname. Israel Adesanya is going to be erased on Saturday. And Paulo Costa is going to walk out of there in just his 14th professional fight as the UFC middleweight champion of the world by knockout.
I think so, too. And I think another thing to consider is Israel Adesanya has fought in over 100 professional fights. Not just MMA fights. We're talking his kickboxing and his boxing career. And he calls John Jones an old man. Dude, you're 2 years younger than John Jones. You've taken a lot of damage in that time. So I think if Paulo Costa honestly hits him with one good shot, it could be over and out for Israel Adesanya. What do you think?
I think that's certainly possible. Like I said, the first 2 minutes are going to define this fight for me. And I think Paulo Costa is so athletic, so powerful, and so aggressive moving forward that I'm not going to go out on a limb and say it's going to be a first-round knockout, but I think Costa is going to take control of this fight within the first 2 minutes, and that's where we're going to see this one decided.
Yep. I think that's the best way to sum it up. Give me Costa by KO. All right, Daniel, on to some news. Mike Perry and Robbie Lawler are going to fight at 254, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Let's hope Mike Perry's okay.
Really, for his sake, I hope he does.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting 255.
255. Okay. Do you have any other news?
Another fight that's scheduled. Well, not necessarily scheduled. December 5th, the UFC is targeting Cody Stamann versus Merab Dvalishvili. So that would be a very interesting fight for me because Dvalishvili is obviously an up-and-comer. Stamann's coming off a loss to Jimmy Rivera back in July. This would be a really big test, a big step forward for Dvalishvili in the 135-pound division. But I think it would be one that would be a really fun watch.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Dvalishvili is becoming one of my favorite fighters. You know, the combination of judo and striking, I enjoy him a lot. So I'm excited to catch up on that fight. What else you got?
One more. It looks like we might finally get Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira. They're looking at that for November 7th, trying to reschedule that for the 3rd time. So with those guys, both have tested positive for COVID-19. Teixeira before the first fight and then Santos before the second fight. So with how important that fight is going to be to the contendership after Jan Blachowicz and Dominick Reyes go at it on Saturday, that fight needs to happen very soon. And I'm very encouraged to see the UFC trying to get it on the schedule within, the next 2 months.
Definitely. That's all I have. What do you got? Anything else?
Me.
All right. Well, Saturday's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait. All right. Well, that'll do it for us here at Throwin Hands. You can catch us on Twitter at Throwin Hands Podcast. Yeah, Throwin Hands Podcast. You can also find us on literally any podcast platform. We just got put on Amazon Podcasts. Fun fact. So if you like your podcast on Amazon, check us out there. Daniel, I want to thank you for coming back on again.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time for a Myron Malaki interview. So keep watch for that.